Sex-linked traits. So far we have discussed simple Mendelian genetics. We've discussed incomplete codominance and multiple alleles, which are examples of complex genetic inheritance. The last thing we must discuss is sex-linked traits. So as you already know, humans have 23 pairs of homologous chromosomes. The final pair of chromosomes relates to the gender of the individual. You have either two X's, one X, or one Y, and they are called your sex chromosomes. We also already know that the other 22 pair of chromosomes are known as autosomes because they are non-sex chromosomes. So in every person's body, you have 22 pairs of autosomes and one final pair of sex chromosomes. As we've discussed in the past, the determination of your gender depends on the presence or absence of the Y chromosome. A normal human female has two X chromosomes, while a normal human male has an X and a Y chromosome. So the Y determines whether you're a male or a female. So you can see if you want to determine your sex, you have a Punnett Square with the two different genotypes. At the top you have your father, XY. On the left you have your mother, XX. You do the Punnett Square, fill in the top, fill in the left, fill in the boxes, and you can see that there's always a 50-50 chance of having a female or a male baby. Even if you have 4 female babies in a row, the 5th baby there is still a 50-50 chance of having a boy or a girl. All traits that we have discussed so far, the genes have been located on autosomes, so they have normal patterns of inheritance. However, there are still genes present on the X and Y chromosomes. So genes that are located on the X and Y chromosomes are known as sex-linked genes because they are located on the sex chromosome. And traits that are determined by these sex-linked genes are called sex-linked traits. So an example of a sex-linked trait is colorblindness. The gene that controls the color-seeing molecules in your eyes is located on the X chromosome. There's the dominant version, which is the normal version, which lets you see color, and there's a recessive version where the cones do not develop properly and you are unable to see color. So you can see that the genotype for a sex-linked trait at the bottom has the X and Y chromosomes because that is the actual chromosome that it's being on, and you notice at the top there is a superscript. You see that there's a little c. So just like before with genotype, you still have letters, but the top right letter is what the genotype of that trait is. So you can see that if you are female and you're colorblind, since it is recessive, you have 2 X copies of that gene, both with a superscript, a small letter C to the top right. And if you're a male, since you only have 1 X chromosome, you only need 1 bad copy of that. So notice, for sex-linked traits, females need 2 recessive copies for the gene to occur, while males only need 1 bad copy, because they do not have another X copy to fix the bad copy. So I already mentioned this, that sex-linked traits are usually recessive, not always, but usually recessive. So therefore that means that if you're a female, you must have both X chromosomes have the recessive trait for that trait to be expressed in a female, while if you're a male, you only need 1. Once again, as I said, if you're a male, you only need to have 1 bad copy of the gene, since you do not have another version to help you stop the recessive trait. We have a new vocab word for this part of the lesson. It is a carrier. So a carrier is a person that has the trait on only 1 chromosome and does not express it. So therefore a carrier is heterozygous for that trait. A carrier of a sex-linked trait has to be a woman, and that is something I will test you on. Only females can be carriers of sex-linked traits because you have to have 1 good copy and 1 bad copy, a dominant and recessive copy. Well, girls, you can see for colorblindness, could have a normal version, X big C at the top, and a recessive version, X little c at the top. However, as a male, I can only have 1 copy. So therefore, either I have color blindness or I don't. I cannot carry color blindness. So a carrier is a heterozygous individual for that trait, and only females can be carriers of sex-linked traits. Let us go through an example of a sex-linked Punnett square. So now using a Punnett square, looking at sex-linked traits. So you see the question is that a colorblind male marries a normal female. What are the offspring's genotypes and phenotypes? So you can see that you have a colorblind male. I already filled in the Punnett square for you. If you're a colorblind male, color blindness resides on the X chromosome and is recessive. So you see at the top left, you have X little c and Y representing the male genes. And you have a normal female, normal meaning that it is not a carrier, so they have two copies of the dominant color seeing gene. So at the left you see X big C for that normal female. And the question is, do the cross and figure out the genotypes and phenotypes. So you can see, fill in the squares. So you have X big C, X little c. You have X big C, X little c. You have X big C and a Y. And you have X big C and a Y. So what are the possible genotypes and phenotypes? So you can see that if you are a female, you have a 100% chance of not being colorblind. So all females are normal. So 100% normal for females. And if you're a guy, you have also big C, so you also have a 100% chance if you are a male baby being normal. However, notice that if I ask the question how many would be carriers, you can see that there are 100% of the female babies are carriers for color blindness. So if they were to have a male child in the future, their male children would be colorblind. Alright, so another example, you have a normal male marries a carrier. What are the genotypes, offspring's genotypes and phenotypes? So you have a normal male, so therefore they have X and a big C because they're normal, and they're Y. And a carrier. So a carrier means that you're heterozygous. So you have X big C, X little c. You do the Punnett square. And then you are going to answer the question. So you can see if you are a female, you have a 100% chance of being normal. If you are a male, you see that is actually a 50-50 chance of being normal or being colorblind. So depending, your mom determines whether you are colorblind or not. Your dad has no determination on whether the baby is colorblind. You always blame the mom for that. Another example, so you have a normal male marries a colorblind female, which is very rare. What are the offspring's genotypes and phenotypes? So you have a normal male, so big X, big C, and a Y. You have a colorblind female, so therefore that is little c, X and little c. You do the cross, that's an X. Do the other cross. Last side. And you can see that all of the female babies would be carriers, while all of the male babies would be 100% colorblind. So once again, mom determines whether you are colorblind or not. And if your mom is colorblind and that person has a male child, all of her sons will be colorblind. And that is the kind of question that you'll see. Last thing I want to discuss is another sex-linked trait that is prevalent in the royal family of England because they like to mix royal blood with royal blood. There's quite a bit of incest happening. So hemophilia is a blood disorder which is characterized by uncontrolled bleeding. So it is a sex-linked trait where there's errors in the DNA that eliminates the ability to create a clotting factor. So when you cut yourself, instead of scabbing up, you lack that clotting factor that causes the scab, and you will keep bleeding until eventually you die. It is a very debilitating disease. Nowadays, though, there are treatments, and we can replace that blood factor, so it is no longer the death sentence that it used to be. But you can see here's the example. You have a mother that's a carrier at the top left. You have a normal father. You can see they use a slightly different notation. The hemophilia gene is an X with that little red line at the side of it. You see when they do the crosses, you can see that you could end up with a normal daughter, a normal son, a carrier daughter, or a carrier son. So there's a 1 in 4 chance of having a child with hemophilia, but there's a 50% chance of having a son with hemophilia.